My neighbor mentioned, your wife loads suitcases into her car every Thursday at 2 a.m. Gerald said it casually over the fence while I was grilling burgers, like he was commenting on the weather instead of destroying my entire understanding of my marriage. Must be some early flight schedule with her job, he added, completely unaware that my wife Rebecca worked from home as a graphic designer and hadn't traveled for business in 2 years. I forced a laugh and made some excuse about consultant meetings, but my hand shook as I flipped the burgers. Thursday was 3 days away, and I intended to find out exactly what Rebecca was doing with those suitcases. For the next 2 days, I watched my wife like a detective studying a suspect. She seemed perfectly normal, making dinner, discussing our weekend plans, working on her laptop in her pajamas until noon. There were no signs of deception, no nervous behaviors, no unexplained absences, but Gerald was a retired police officer who'd made a second career out of neighborhood watch. If he said he saw suitcases, there were suitcases. Wednesday night, I pretended to take my sleeping pills but palmed them instead. Rebecca kissed me goodnight at 11, and I forced myself to lie still, breathing deeply, fighting every urge to confront her immediately. At 1:47 a.m., I felt her slip out of bed. Through barely opened eyes, I watched her dress in dark clothes, moving with practiced silence. She paused at the doorway, looking back at me for a long moment before disappearing downstairs. I waited 5 minutes before following, creeping to our bedroom window that overlooked the driveway. Rebecca emerged from the garage pulling 2 large suitcases, the expensive ones we'd bought for our anniversary trip to Europe. She loaded them into her SUV with surprising strength, then went back for a third smaller bag. The way she moved suggested she'd done this many times before. I threw on clothes and grabbed my keys, planning to follow her, but Rebecca's car was already gone when I reached the garage. She'd taken my opportunity to track our phones by leaving hers on the kitchen counter. I sat in my car until dawn, inventing and dismissing theories. An affair seemed obvious, but why suitcases? Money laundering? Drug running? Nothing made sense with the Rebecca I thought I knew. She returned at 6:15 a.m., exactly when she usually woke up. I pretended to be asleep when she slipped back into bed, smelling faintly of something industrial. Bleach? Disinfectant? She showered immediately, longer than usual, and emerged looking exactly like the woman I'd married 11 years ago. That Thursday, I prepared better. I borrowed Gerald's car and parked 3 blocks away at midnight. When Rebecca left at 2 a.m., I followed at a distance, my heart pounding as she drove across town to an industrial area I'd never visited. She pulled into a warehouse that looked abandoned except for a single lit loading dock. 3 other cars were already there, and women emerged from each one, all pulling suitcases. They moved with choreographed efficiency, transferring the bags inside before driving away within 10 minutes. I waited until Rebecca left, then approached the warehouse. The loading dock was locked, but through a grimy window, I glimpsed rows of medical equipment and what looked like surgical supplies. A sign on the door read, Renewal Foundation, Private Facility. Google revealed nothing about any Renewal Foundation at this address. Friday morning, I confronted Rebecca. I told her about Gerald's observation, my surveillance, the warehouse. I expected tears, denials, maybe an explosive fight. Instead, she sat down quietly and said, I knew this day would come. I'm sorry I lied, but I couldn't risk telling you the truth. The truth was more incredible than any theory I'd imagined. Rebecca was part of an underground network helping domestic abuse victims disappear. The suitcases contained new identities, cash, prepaid phones, and essential supplies. The warehouse was a safe house where women stayed before being relocated to new cities with new names. She'd been recruited 5 years ago by her friend Melissa, who I thought had moved to Portland but had actually fled an abusive husband. Every Thursday at 2 a.m., we move women from the safe house to their transport locations, Rebecca explained. The timing is deliberate. Police shift changes, minimal traffic, fewer potential witnesses. We've saved 147 women and their children. She showed me encrypted files on a hidden partition of her computer. Testimonials from survivors, thank you letters from women who'd rebuilt their lives, photographs of children who'd escaped violence because of Rebecca's network. The suitcases that had terrified me were lifelines for desperate families. The revelation left me reeling between pride and anger. Pride that my wife was literally saving lives. Anger that she'd hidden something this significant, that she decided I couldn't be trusted with her secret. Rebecca understood both emotions, but stood by her choice. The fewer people who know, the safer everyone is, she said. Some of these women's ex-partners have resources you wouldn't believe. Private investigators, corrupt cops, sophisticated tracking systems. One leaked detail could get someone killed. I wanted to support her, but the secrecy had created a wound in our marriage that wouldn't heal quickly. We started couples therapy with a counselor who specialized in partners of first responders and people in sensitive positions. Slowly, we rebuilt trust with new boundaries. Rebecca continued her Thursday missions, but now I knew where she was going and why. 6 months later, Gerald mentioned the suitcases had stopped. I told him Rebecca had changed her client meeting schedule. He seemed satisfied with the explanation, unaware that my wife had simply gotten better at avoiding his surveillance. Some secrets, I learned, are worth keeping, and some lies are actually love in disguise, protecting both the liar and the person being lied to from truths that could destroy everything.